for joining. My name is Ankit Bhatt. You've already been introduced. I want to keep it nice
Re-engineering
and
and
short.
change
Yeah, I'm currently based
management,
in Canada, in Edmonton. I've been here
and
for over a decade now. I'm
he's
working as
also
a senior
delivering
BA
actionable
contractor
insights that
with
drive
the
tangible
government of
results.
Manitoba currently,
So
which
this
is one of
is
the
our
provincial
trainer
governments.
Ankit
I'm a
sir.
certified
So
business
sir, you
analysis
can take
professional,
it from here.
and I'm here to facilitate this session and to help you through your journey for strategy analysis. And I'm okay. Sure. Thank you so much. This will be helpful. webinar into those case studies. But yeah, I will share as I go along. Strategy analysis. So let's kick things off by strategy analysis. We'll try and go as much as detail possible in each task, starting to understand the purpose of strategy analysis. Just ignore about the case study and example. We're going to break this down into four key examples as I go along. Key areas. So first of all, we'll talk about analyzing the current part of the current state, basically understanding where we are today right now. I will share what's the situation in the current state. So let's kick things off about the system, about the technology, about the resourcing, about the culture of the organization, and then we'll find out about strategy analysis, defining the future state of where we want to go in the future, where the company should go down into four key 6 months, 1 year, 5 year, 10 years, whatever. And what is that transition, or how that transition is going to work out? How is the change strategy going to be? How are we going to get there, basically? But we are not going to stop at any particular theory. I'll also walk you through some practical techniques that you can kind of start using right away. And we'll tie everything together with a real world example so you can see how it all fits, right? My goal here is very simple. By the end of the session, I should, or kind of you should feel confident that applying these concepts will be easier for you in your domain that you're working in. So let's take a moment to understand the foundation behind everything that we are discussing today, probably based on the BABOK guide, because that's the key. The business analysis body of knowledge, which is commonly known as BABOK, it was, as you know, it's published by IIBA, and it is widely recognized as a global standard for the practice of BA tasks and deliverables. In the version 3 of BABOK, which is the current version right now, the business analysis has been organized into what we call as knowledge areas, like I mentioned earlier, for one of your questions that you had. Each knowledge area represents a major set of responsibilities that the BA perform in their particular role. You might not perform all knowledge areas, you might perform some of them, but they're still key activities that you will perform. And this practical structure, it brings clarity, it brings consistency. It also kind of makes you a disciplined BA and helping your stakeholders in making those key decisions. So it kind of makes you and your initiatives more professional and help your organization align on the expectation and implement those best practices. And one of those knowledge areas is the strategy analysis, which is actually one of the most strategic and most highly impacted areas within the BABOK. Now, I'm not saying that all other knowledge areas are not important. They are. Each knowledge area has important weightage, but strategy, I would say, comes on top of all, because if you do not have a great strategy, the other things might kind of fall apart at some point in time, because it focuses on understanding the current business environment, defining how the desired future state will be, how you're going to kind of effectively implement those strategies or make a plan to get to where you want to go. And it also kind of provides that value for the organizations who are looking to derive meaningful change and who wants to earn a long-term value. Now, value does not always mean that it could be with money. It could be with process efficiencies. It could be with customer experience. Like, so for example, in my current role at Government of Manitoba, where I recently finished my contract, we had a lot of projects that I worked in had manual processes throughout. So, for example, vital statistics, where you have to where you can register your life events like birth of a child, your marriage, your change of name, and various other events. Now, that was a paper-based process. It was a very tedious, inefficient process. It has a lot of errors, complaints from the complaints that why it's so delayed, things like that. So, and the vision was that to have some sort of automation, to have some sort of kind of platform where people can just log in or just visit the website or a portal. They can complete the application, they can kind of submit those documents, and they can kind of check the status of their application in real time as to where the application is, how soon they're going to get the certificate that they are applying for, things like that. And one of the biggest advantage of this is of the BABOK version 3. It provides a common language where whether you're working across teams, departments, or even in different countries, It ensures that everybody is aligned in how they understand and approach the business analysis. So it's all about consistency, because what you want to do is, when you want to practice a discipline, you want to have that consistency in your approach, in your practices, in your tasks and deliverables, so that you can get the great results out of it. So now, coming to this agenda here, what exactly is strategy analysis? Now, most of you might know, most of you might not know. That's totally okay. We're not judging here. The the core of strategy analysis is about answering four very fundamental, but I would say powerful questions that would guide the decision making within any organization. First, as I told you, where we are today. So it's about understanding the current state, how the business operates, what are the challenges that exist, what are the opportunities that might already be present in the organization, what are the threats. It could be internal threats, it could be external threats, right? Second is, where do we want to go, right? We want to define the future state. What does success look like for our organization? What are the business goals that we are trying to achieve? And the third is, one of the critical thing is, uh, risks. Are there any risks that could stop us? Are there any constraints that could stop us from being where we want to be? Because if you do not have uh, a practically clear strategy, uh, with all the risks included or the impacts included, your projects, your initiatives would fall apart. There could be some internal factors, there could be external factors that could impact the success. It could be related to the culture within the organization. It could be related to some obsolete, or I would say, outdated systems or softwares in the organization. It could be the limitation due to some sort of learning and development within the organization. So identifying those risks will help us, as a BA, to make better and more informed decisions, or help people who are in the decision making group in the organization. And final piece is, how do we get there? So we know where we are right now, we know where we want to go. So for example, our system right now has been declared obsolete 10 years ago. Now we want a new CRM dynamic system 365. Okay, so how are we going to get there? How do we get the system? How do we implement it? What about training and development, this, that, what? So the plan, this is where we define the path forward, the approach of the initiative. And we'll make sure that the changes that needed to be implemented to help us move from the current state to the desired future state. So when you look at this key four questions, there could be more questions, but these are, I think, four key questions that you can think of initially. Uh, Strategy analysis becomes much more than just a framework. It becomes a way of how you think, how you act. So it focuses on understanding why the change is needed, and not just what needs to be fixed or changed. So, but focusing more on the why part of it. So, what it does is it helps the organization, with your help, obviously, to step back, to look at the bigger picture, and then define a clear direction for the future. And that's what makes it more powerful, because strategy analysis is not just about solving any immediate problems or issues. It's about ensuring that the organization is moving in the right direction. The decisions are made that creates long-term value rather than short-term fixes. You would have heard, I think the most common thing we as a BA here is that, talk about the big picture. Don't talk about short-term things. Talk about the big picture. Talk about big things. Talk about the long-term value. So that's where this piece comes in. And why it is so important? From my experience, personally, I'm talking about, the reality is that strategy analysis. Uh, what I observed is that many organizations, they invest significant time, money, and effort into initiatives that kind of ultimately fail, and it's not always because of the poor execution. In many cases, those initiatives fail because they were simply wrong initiatives to begin with, and that's where the strategy analysis makes a critical difference. Now, before I proceed, I just have a quick thing to ask, and you can say yes or no. Is my pace good? Is it too fast? Is it too slow?
I feel it's just right.
Okay, sure. And Himanshu, can you please turn off your camera? I'm not sure what your last name is, but Himanshu, I can see your name. Himanshu, please turn off your camera. Right. So first of all, what it does is it helps align initiatives with business goals. So instead of working on projects in isolation, uh, the organization will ensure that every effort it directly supports the overall strategy and the objectives. Point number two, it will also help in reducing the waste or wasted investments. Sometimes you see that the money that was invested is totally gone waste because it wasn't kind of planned properly or implemented properly. So when you clearly understand the current state and the desired future state, the risks involved within that, you are kind of far better or less likely to spend resources on initiatives that don't deliver real value. The third thing is it also significantly kind of helps you in improving that decision making level. So once the decision making improves, everything else kind of follows through. And so the strategy analysis it provides a way to evaluate options. It helps you in weighing of trade-offs, and it helps you in making those informed choices, which is based on the data, the context, and not just assumptions. Certain assumptions will be there, but then it will help you to kind of verify whether those assumptions are realistic or not. And when you bring all this together, the real impact becomes clear. So now you have kind of done all the work, and you have shown that what actually it looks like right now. So strategy analysis it ensures that every change an organization undertakes is purposeful. It connects your daily initiatives with your long-term vision because as you know that functional decomposition when we talk about we want to break down that bigger picture into small different tasks and deliverables. So when every task becomes a reality or kind of easy to perform, it kind of contributes to the overall goal, right? So again, for a quick example, I want to give you. So I was working on an animal welfare project at Government of Manitoba. We had to kind of break those features down into multiple scenarios and stories, like we always do in agile projects. But there were some complex issues, like how do you want to manage the complaint that are being coming from multiple resources, like phone, email, web. How are we going to manage those? How are we going to manage those scenarios? How are we going to transfer handoffs in the future state? These are the real problems right now that are happening. So that once we have a clear picture, we can move in the right direction. Because at the end of the day, our goal is not just to have that success in delivering the projects. Our goal is also about delivering the right projects, which can create some sort of sustainable long-term value rather than just short-term fixes or short-term gains. So we talked about the current state. We talked about the change strategy, associated risks. We talked about the future state where do we want to reach. Now we're going to talk about some kind of learning and the task that falls within the strategy analysis as well. So according to BABOK version 3, there are four key tasks in strategy analysis. And if you think them in a logical flow, it will help you in understanding that particular process. It will make sense a lot rather than reading it just like a book. So first of all, as I'm informed that we understand the current state, this is where we take a deep dive, a deep look on the operations that are happening today in the organization. What about the processes, the capabilities, the challenges within the organization, the opportunities, the threats. So without a clear picture of the current state, it is impossible to know what needs to be changed. So that's there. As I mentioned, next we define the future state. Once the current state and future states are clear, we assess the risks. And finally, the fourth task will be defining the change strategy. This is about creating a structured plan to move from the current state to the future state. It also includes how we are going to prioritize our initiatives, how we're going to allocate our resources, and ensuring that all efforts are aligned with the business goals. So this structured step-by-step approach will help you ensuring bringing clarity, will help you align everything and take purposeful actions. So it's not about just reacting to a change, but kind of proactively taking steps and making plans and executing those initiatives that is going to truly deliver value to yourself as a BA, plus your stakeholders as well as your organization. So it describes how the BA work is performed to collaborate with stakeholders to identify need or of strategic or tactical importance. It describes how to enable enterprise to address that need and align the resulting strategy for the change with higher and lower strategies, and focusing on identifying the current state, future state, um, of how we want to get there, how we're going to get there, and identifying all those gaps that needs to be addressed along the way. So the first task is the analyzing current state. Now, for any initiative, any project, no matter how big or small, this is the first step that you always do. You want to analyze the current state. You want to find out where we are currently standing, where the process is currently standing, where the system is currently standing, how the operations are working right now. So you take a deep dive and kind of gauge where the organization stands today. You want to analyze several key areas like the process that drives the day-to-day operations, the systems that support those processes, the capabilities within the organization. It could be capability including to the resources, to the technology as well. You want to also analyze if the people that are working in the organization are capable enough to utilize a particular system. Sometimes that could be a gap that you want to improve in the future state. So you maybe want to improve, excuse me, you want to implement some sort of learning and development for those individuals or a group of individuals that can kind of utilize the full potential of a system that is already there. Even the structure of the organization that defines the roles and responsibilities. Sometimes you might need to kind of revise the structure of the organization or the org structure, you want to say. So having that multi-dimension approach or a multi-dimension view and analyzing each and every piece step by step, you will get a complete picture of how the organization functions right now. And this would give you key inputs or the information that would help you in helping that craft of defining the future state, or helping that aligning that vision of the organization. So if you have to spend more than 100% of your time into analyzing the current state, I would stress upon that, please do so. Because if you have a strong concrete base, you will have a nice building on top of it. Anything that is missed in analyzing the current state could also be a risk going forward. Any assumption that have not been verified could also be a risk going forward, right? So, and why is it so critical? Because without a clear understanding of the current state, as I said, any planning could also be your any planning that you make would also be based on your assumptions only, because you assume certain things and you made a plan that this is what is going to happen in the future, or this is how it should happen in the future, because you have not completed that critical part of current state analysis. And as I mentioned earlier, assumptions can also be a risk going forward if you do not kind of verify or validate those. It also kind of gets into that mode where we have some misaligned initiatives, we have waste of resources, and the decisions that were made based on that, they don't kind of deliver real value or the actual value or the potential value that was expected on day one of the initiative. So, for example, let's say I would say an analogy of a GPS. Everybody uses these days GPS, right? You wouldn't start planning a route to a new destination without kind of first confirming where you currently are. So you have to put your current location. As soon as you put that, I'm living at 12345 Heaven Avenue. That's where I'm living in right now. Okay, that's my current location. And then you put your destination that, okay, I want to go to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 Nowhere Avenue. Then the GPS will act and give you the right map of how you can get there. Because if you didn't put it, if you did not do your, if you did not insert your current location, what would you get? You might take wrong turns, get lost, waste your time, your energy, your steps, whatever, if you're walking, right? So understanding the current state gives you a reliable starting point so that every next step in your strategy is grounded in reality. So to effectively understand the current state, several techniques are commonly used by business analysts. And what are the techniques? One of the most widely known technique is a SWOT analysis. I'm sure everybody is aware about strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. Right? It helps you to identify organizational strength and weakness, as well as any external opportunities and threats that are there, which helps us to see where the organization has advantages, where the challenges may exist. Right? Another important approach is process analysis. This focuses on how actually the work is getting done right now. What are the bottlenecks? What are the inefficiencies? What are the redundancies? So understanding these area allows us to identify where improvement can be made and how operations can be optimized. We also use stakeholder analysis, which is critical for understanding their needs, expectations, the influence of different individuals or groups. This ensures when changes are proposed, they, how they are aligned with the priorities of those who will be affected the most. So the ultimate goal of all these techniques is to build a complete and objective picture of the organization. Now, there are several techniques mentioned in BABOK, uh, and you're not bound to use those only. You can use any techniques that helps you in understanding the current state, in understanding your stakeholders, in understanding the situation that is there currently in the organization. But some of them I would like to mention here: benchmarking and market analysis, business model canvas, business cases, concept modeling, data mining, document analysis, observation. Right? So there are many techniques that you can utilize, or you can utilize some of these as well, or you can use something else that has worked for you in the past or in a similar initiative that you're working on. So the next part of understanding the current state goes deeper. It's about identifying the real problem or the opportunity. So often, what stakeholder initially say is that the problem is just a symptom and not a deeper kind of an issue. For example, a company might say that, okay, you know what, we need a new system. But on the surface, it sounds like the technology issue. But if we go deeper, we might discover that the real problem is the inefficient processes, unclear responsibilities, or maybe some outdated workflows. So simply implementing a new system wouldn't solve the root cause. It would just treat this kind of a symptom. It will not fix the problem. This is where your skill as a business analyst becomes critical. We need to ask the right questions. We need to challenge the assumptions. And the I would say the two key questions. There could be many, but the two key ones are like, why does this problem even exist? Right? What it does is this will help you understand the underlying cause rather than kind of reacting to what is visible. So if somebody says, replace the system, give me a new system, why do you even need a new system? Why do you think that this current system does not help you? Tell me about it. Let me see how it's done. So questioning that. What is the real impact? This question will help you in understanding the underlying cause rather than kind of reacting to what is visible. So your or our job, rather, I would say, as a business analyst, is to ask as many questions as possible. Sometimes people might feel annoyed that why are you asking us this many questions? Because if you do not ask questions, you might give them something that they don't want. So having that initial conversation that, you know what, my job is not just to fix your problem. My job is also to ask you questions so that I can extract the accurate information. I can extract the real problem that you're facing right now, not just what is visible to you. Sometimes in one of my previous projects, uh, I got a request of implementing Power BI for reporting and dashboarding. They were using Microsoft Excel. Now, initially, when that request came in, everybody would say, okay, okay, you will get the new software. What I did in that case, I sat down with the stakeholders. I asked them questions that, okay, you know what? Can you please walk me through of the need that why do you need Power BI specifically? Why not any other software? What existing software that you're using right now that does not satisfy your need? They walked me through the process. They showed me that they're preparing this many reports, this many dashboards, but it's not uh, on a regular basis. They do it like once in a 6 months or once in a year, and they don't even have to present that to anybody else. They just have to present that within that group. I said, okay, do you have Microsoft Excel? Yes, I do have Microsoft Excel. Can I show you something that is already there in Microsoft Excel? If you heard about Power BI or Power BI, Power Design in Microsoft Excel, I showed them how they can create those dashboards from within the Excel application. And I said, does this satisfy your need? Yes. Then you don't need Power BI. Eventually, there are several other reasons why they ended up getting Power BI, but that was a different conversation altogether. But at that point in time, by questioning those or by asking those effective questions of why this, why not this, and as a BA, sometimes we feel scared that why are we? Oh, maybe they will feel bad if we ask them questions. But don't ask questions, because you are adding a value when you ask a question. If you do not ask a value, you're costing a lot to the company in some or the other way. So asking those, even if it's annoying to someone or irritating to someone, please ask those questions, and be more respectful. Bring that logic in those questions. That why are you asking those questions, right? And now that we've truly analyzed the current state, the next step is to define the future state. So let's step into that. So this is where you will define where the organization wants to go, and that's what we call as a future state. So it's about creating a clear vision of success, which involves several key elements. So first of all, we look into the strategic goals. What is the organization trying to achieve in medium and long-term goals? These goals provide direction and ensure that all initiatives support broader mission. We also focus on improved processes by envisioning more efficient workflows, more effective operations. We can reduce waste, how we can increase the productivity, how we can enhance overall performance. Because it's critical that the future state is not only clear, but more realistic. It should be achievable with resources, with constraints, and within those timelines that are there for any project or initiative. So, in short, in one statement, if I have to tell you, the future state, it provides the organization a kind of a target to aim for. It kind of turns those abstract goals into tangible outcomes. It also creates a roadmap for meaningful strategic change. And a strong future state is not just a vision, but it's more of a practical, achievable target that kind of guides organizational change. Typically, I would say a well-defined future state would include better performance. Uh, it also means faster processes, higher efficiencies, or improved quality in products and services. Right. Another key element could be that we want to improve, or not improve, but improve customer experience. So let's say our goal was to improve the customer satisfaction score by 15% in the next quarter. That's our goal. That's our future state that we want to see in the next 3 months. And we also look at some scalable systems. So from my point of view, a future state should not only meet current needs, but it also should be capable of supporting the growth. For example, if I go back to that vital set project, we implemented the phase one recently for vital sets, and in that we implemented the Microsoft Dynamics CRM. Plus, we developed a web portal where people can go and register their life events, like somebody's birth, somebody's death, child, somebody got married, and several other events. Right. So we improved that manual process into an automated electronic platform process. Systems, processes, capabilities, they should be aligned, or I would say designed to the for the organization, so that they can adapt and expand without major disruption. So solution has to be scalable. So what if, let's say, if one of the big four companies I'm talking about, for example, if one of the companies has 15,000 employees for now, for example, and in the 5 years time they are targeting to have another 15,000 added. So is that system scalable to for 30,000 users? Or any particular system that you're using right now, is it scalable to that amount of users? Thinking about those possibilities so that you can expand without disrupting anything. And importantly, make sure that the future state is measurable, it is achievable. Right, you can define those measures of how we're going to measure it, how we're going to achieve those targets. For example, I mentioned that, okay, your company wants to increase customer satisfaction score by another 15% in the next quarter. So how are we going to do it? How are we going to measure that, if it happened or not? What are the methods that we're going to measure? So a strong future state is practical, it's strategic, and aligned with the aligned with the organization's long-term goals. It gives everyone a clear target to work toward. It includes you as a BA as well, because then you can define what are the excuse me, task and deliverable that you need to complete. Now, a variety of techniques that are there to ensure that the vision is more realistic, more valuable. Two of the most effective technique I have come across in strategy analysis is benchmarking and business capability analysis. Right, benchmarking involves comparing the performance of the organization, processes, practices against the industry standards. That would tell you where you are right now, how you need to compete better if you want to stay in the competition against the best-in-class industries in the market. It also helps you identify any gaps, opportunities of where the organization may be lagging behind, where the competitors are, where you can excel. Right, understanding those business goals, scope of the solution, understanding those constraints, making maybe kind of re-engineering the org structure and the culture within the organization, and improving those capabilities that is there, and even enhancing the existing capabilities. So when you undertake business capability assessment within the organization, you will find out that there are certain capabilities that you can continue on. There are certain capabilities that you need to improve, they need to improvise so that you can stay in the competition, stay in the market, or you can add more value to your organization. And always understand that those goals are smart, they're specific, measurable, achievable, they're relevant, they're time bound, so they can be finished within a particular time frame. So for example, let's say I'll give you an example about a shampoo. For example, let's say if there's a dandruff shampoo in the market right now, and the company name is ABC. Now there's one more company that you're working on, they're also launching the same sort of shampoo, and they think that, okay, you know what, if we cannot launch this product within the next 6 months, we are out of the competition, because that other product will take over. So are you ready for that? Is the project can be delivered within that particular time frame? Can you keep up with the competition? So understanding those time bound goals as well. So the techniques will help you in ensuring that how grounded you are to the reality. They will provide you both a benchmark to measure success and a roadmap for what needs to be improved, ensuring that the organization is positioned to achieve its strategic goals, and efficiently and effectively, that you can deliver those products or services. Now, the third task after this future state comes is the assessing the risks. Now, as I mentioned earlier, every task or every initiative would have some sort of risk involved, right? No matter how well planned the strategy is, it carries some level of risk. Please understand that. That's the harsh reality. So you will have some sort of risk anyway. Even if you are the best planner in the world, you will still carry some sort of risk. So that's why the next step in the strategy analysis is assessing risk. So now you have done the current state, now you have done the future state, now you are assessing the risk. Oh, so how do we do this? So first of all, we want to identify what could go wrong before any major initiatives are launched. It can come from many sources. It could be internal risks, limited resources, or process inefficiencies. It could be some external factors like such as market shift, regulatory changes, or competitive pressures. So if I talk about the current situation right now, we have war going on, right? So we have many services that are disrupted, many services that are kind of uncertain of what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen in the next hour. Were you prepared for that? No, yes, maybe. Also, working in government has some sort of regulatory constraints, policy change, ministers change, the government change. So things change eventually. So those also adds to the risk of all projects, all initiatives. So understanding these risks early in is very, very critical, because it will allow you as well as the organization to make those informed decisions. And making yourself aware or making your stakeholders aware of what could potentially go wrong or what could potentially derail a project or initiative. You can help those business leaders or strategic leaders plan those mitigations, allocate any required resources, and then also kind of help them in avoiding costly surprises down the line. Right. So, in short, assessing the risk isn't about being pessimistic, it's about being prepared. Even, for example, let's say, okay, I want to go to the office, I want to drive to the office today. What are my risks? Maybe that could be a collision on the way. There could be some traffic. I might not reach on the time. Do I have another contingency plan, another plan that I can go for? So things like thinking about those does not make you a pessimist. Please understand that. Now, sometimes people say, "Why you always talk about risk? You always talk about these things. Why? Because it is necessary. It will help you in plan in a better way. It will put you in a better position going forward. You have to have that rationale behind your answers in the explanation, that why I'm suggesting this, why I'm saying this. It is based on my experience. It is based on my kind of previous initiatives that I've worked in. It is based on my expert judgment, and it ensures that when you move from the current state, or help the organization move from current state to future state, uh, it will help you with a clear understanding of potential obstacles, right, and plan to address them. So by proactively identifying and analyzing those risks, strategy analysis specifically increases the likelihood uh, that the initiatives will succeed, they will deliver real value, and they will have a sustainable value. So, what do you do when accessing risks? So, when accessing the risk in strategy analysis, it is important to recognize the type of risks that commonly arise. Right. So, one of the most frequent risk is a financial constraint. You must have heard that often, that, okay, you know what, this project is on hold. Especially me working in a government domain, some of the projects went on hold all of a sudden because there's no much budgeting for this project right now, so it has to pause. This other project has to start. So they have limited budgets, and if these constraints are not considered early, the initiatives may stall, may fail to deliver that expected value that was kind of expected at the day one of the initiative. So another common risk is the technology limitation. Even the best strategic plan can be hindered uh, if the existing systems are outdated, and without proper engagement, communication, and support initiatives, they may face pushback or low adoption even if the solution is well designed. So, in short, understanding the risks may allow the organization to plan thoroughly, make informed decisions, and move forward with confidence. And once you identify the risk, the next step is to plan mitigation strategies. So, it's an essential proactive action that will reduce the likelihood of or the impact of the potential risks. So, for example, if the financial constraints are identified as a risk, mitigation could involve prioritizing initiatives, adjusting budgets, or seeking additional funding. You know what? We will need some additional funding for this project to finish on time and have the resources allocated. If the technology is a concern, or the limitation of the technology is a concern, the organization might want to invest in a system, upgrading the system, or adopting some alternative options or solutions. And if resistance to change is anticipated, right? Some people do not want to change. And I've seen that many a times, especially working in the government. It include kind of mitigation for stakeholder engagement, training programs, or change management initiatives. Um, I've heard that I don't want to change this system because I've used that for like 20 years. And if the new system comes in, I'm not that well prepared. I'm not trained enough. So I might get kicked out from my job and somebody will replace me because they know how to use it. Things like that. So understanding those risks, capturing those risks, capturing the impact of those risks, that learning and development might be required if you were to go with this particular solution. And so the goal of planning these strategies is to ensure that the organization is prepared for challenges before they even arise, then waiting and to react once they happen, right? Nobody wants to do that. The proactive approach not only reduces the likelihood of failure, but also increases confidence among stakeholders. They also see you as a responsible individual, especially as a BA. We have to have that rapport with the stakeholder, that they can rely on us, they can trust us, right? That the change initiatives are well throughout. So defining a change strategy isn't just about what will be done, it's about how risks will be managed along the way, by combining a clear vision for the future state with, I would say, well planned mitigation strategies. The organization can move forward with greater amount of certainty and a higher chance of success. So once that is done, the next thing, the final step in the strategy analysis is defining the change strategy, essentially the roadmap of transformation. How are we going to get there? What do we need to do now? So this roadmap kind of lays out how the organization will move from current state to the desired future state. It details the kind of initiatives of the organizations, the priorities, the actions that needs to be taken to achieve the strategic goals that were defined earlier. So it's kind of a navigation plan, I would say, which tells everyone involved what steps need to be taken in what order, and which resources will be included in the initiative. So well-defined change strategy ensures alignment across the organization. It helps the team understanding their roles, how their work contributes to the bigger picture, and any potential risks that will be managed along the way. Without this clarity, trust me, even if you have planned like well conceived initiatives, that can become fragmented, that can be delayed, they can be misaligned with the organization objectives. So in short, the change strategy, it is not just a plan, it's a structured approach to transformation. It turns the vision of the future state into actionable steps, and then I believe it ensures that the or every initiative contributes meaningfully to the organization's long-term success. So I would also say that when defining the change strategy, the organization can take different approaches depending on the factors like risks, complexity, available resources. One common approach is agile. So as you know that it involves delivering changes iteratively in small increments, which kind of helps the or allows the organization into adapting quickly based on the feedback, and it evolves the needs. In some organizations, a pilot approach, so which involves a testing a change in a limited area or with a specific group before rolling it out more badly. So, for example, once again, I'm going to coming back to this my recent projects here. We implemented a couple of projects for certain units within the government, and then kind of moved on from there. Uh, by selecting the right approach, the organizations can increase the likelihood of success while minimizing disruption. It also ensures that each step aligns with the strategic objectives. So having that pilot would give you a good grounding, good feedback in real time, and then it will help you expand your scope to the other units in the organization. So quickly, let's bring all these concepts together with a practical example. So I want you to imagine a retail company that kind of traditionally relies on a physical stores, but not want to transition to an e-commerce model. So this is a significant change, and it's a perfect scenario to see the strategy analysis in action. So the first step is to understand the current state. The company would kind of analyze its existing processes, systems, capabilities, and the structure of the organization. It might kind of identify that the in-store sale processes are manual, the IT systems are probably outdated, the staffs are trained primarily for in-store operations. Then the company would define the future state, which the goal could be creating a seamless online shopping experience with scalable systems, so that as the customer base grows, the system can easily expand without any disruptions. Faster order fulfillment and improve customer experience. The future state would be like specifying those capabilities needed. It's like we want to go into digital marketing, inventory management for online orders, and we want to also go for customer support for e-commerce. And then kind of assessing those risks. The company might face some sort of financial constraints. Like, you know what, we might not even have that much of budget. Constraints for new technology, that we might not be able to kind of move along with the new technology. Uh, Limitations with the legacy systems. Some sort of resistance from staff. To, yes. Which are kind of accustomed to store operations. So as I said, people do not want to change sometime because they fear that they might lose their job, right? So you have to kind of analyze those risks, making those mitigation strategies, which could include a phased technology rollout, having those training programs established, some sort of pilot testing, the e-commerce platform with the subset of products. So you take a bunch of products and you test it out, make sure that it works the way it should be, and then comes the change strategy, which lays out the roadmap for transformation. It kind of specifies how the organization will implement new technology, redesign processes, and train staff using either an agile approach, a phase approach, or pilot approach, depending on the complexity of the risk. So this vital statistics project that I talked about, we went in phases. So first we implemented birth, death, and marriage, and then in the next phase, before I left, we were going to work on the rest of the events. So we kind of piloted with three critical events in phase one. We tested everything out, implemented, it's fully functional right now. And in the next phase, we're going to take care of the rest of the events so that people can kind of take the transactions through. So uh, it kind of clearly shows how strategy connects the current state, uh, the future vision, risks, and the change strategy, turning those kind of abstract concepts into actionable steps that drive real organization value. So, to summarize quickly, for me, and from my point of view and from my experience, strategy analysis is some sort of bridge between an organization's vision and its execution. It also provides a structured approach that ensures the decisions are well informed.
Meeting
Sorry, please can we stay on mute if you are not asking question? Thank you. Um, it provides a structured approach and ensures decisions are well informed. They align with strategic goals, and they are based on clear understanding of both the current and the desired future state. And but when you take that methodical approach, or any organization per se, they can identify the right initiatives, they can allocate resources effectively, and they can plan for any potential risks that could come along the way. So ultimately, the strategy analysis, it helps reducing uncertainty and increases confidence in the decision being made. It also helps you in minimizing those wasted effort and ensures that every change uh, contributes meaningfully to long-term success. So if I were to put in one sentence, it's not just a framework or a set of tasks, but it's a kind of way how you think strategically and ensure that the organization, they move in right direction, how they achieve their goal, and how they're going to deliver the value, or the real value rather. So thank you all for your time and attention today. I hope this has given you a clear understanding of strategy analysis and how it can be applied in real world scenarios. Now, I would want to open the floor for questions. I would love to hear your thoughts, your challenges, your experiences, and anything that comes to mind regarding strategy analysis in your organization. At the same time, I would want to encourage you to take a moment to reflect. How does your organization handle strategy today? Are there any areas where you think the structure approach like strategy analysis could improve decision making, could reduce risk, or increase the success of initiatives? And your reflections and questions are an important part of learning the processes, and discussing them will provide practical insights uh, that go beyond the theory. So we can read books, we can read about strategy analysis, but if you do not put that into practice, uh, it's not of value. So please put that into practice. Think about those questions. Now let's see, what questions do you have for me, or anything that you want to like or want to share with us?
Hi Ankit, Joel here. Have you used business model canvas as a technique ever in strategy analysis?
I would say yes and no. Uh, but any specific thing that you wanted to find out?
So the reason I asked the question is because I haven't personally never used it, and I wanted to know how is business model canvas better or different from a SWOT or SIPCO techniques.
Sorry, which technique you said? Can you speak a little louder, please?
There's a technique called SIPCO. I forget the full form.
You mean SIPOC? Suppliers?
SIPOC. Yeah,
SIPOC, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, business model canvas, a lot of the concepts are similar to a SIPOC. So it might be different in many ways, but there is similarity in some concepts. So I just wanted to know, if we have so many techniques, like 50 techniques, and business model canvas happens to be one of them. In a real setting, do we actually, I mean, I think we might be using a very small percentage of the techniques. Does business model canvas actually give you a very a very good platform when it comes to elaborating and presenting your ideas to the stakeholders?
See, technique always depends on the initiative and the project that you're that you're working in. What does talking about the business model canvas practically, right? What it does is it kind of helps you in visualizing. It helps you in kind of designing and kind of analyzing how the organization creates, delivers, and captures the value, right? Talking about SIPOC that you said, right? Suppliers in I think suppliers, inputs, processes,
Organizations and
and
I
customers.
forget what is C. Yeah, C is customer.
Yeah, so it has five different thing you already know. So suppliers, so who is the one providing the inputs to the processes? What materials, information, resources are needed? What are the key steps? So it's a high level, I would say, process mapping technique, which kind of helps you in defining as well as understanding the business process from from one before you go into too much of detail of that particular process. And if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. As far as I know, this is mostly used in Six Sigma. If you're following that methodology.
Yeah, some people have adapted it even for in BABOK. I mean, in
Yeah. So there are 50 techniques mentioned in BABOK version 3, and so as I said, techniques can be utilized, or any technique can be utilized rather, based on the initiative, the project, or the situation that you're in. So it is your call whether that particular technique would be helpful in this situation or not.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Hi, I wanted to ask a question about the strategy analysis. So, in terms of when it comes to implementation, does it only deal with the macroscopic part of the organization? I mean, like maybe department level or maybe the whole organization level, or can this be used for very specific problem solving?
No, it can be used at any level. So it could be for a particular business unit within the organization as well. So practically, I would say you want to, I mean, based on my experience, you can do for process improvement as well. So maybe let's say if I go back in the day when I was working with other organization back in between 2018 and 2023, there were so many manual processes. What we did is I wouldn't say practically strategy analysis, but we did some process improvement for many of the education domain processes, which included excuse me, transcript assessment process as well. So it was a whole lot of manual process with a lot of handoffs and stuff. So there was a lot of waste. What we did is we implemented lean and value stream mapping to identify all those key steps, that the time it takes from going from one step to the other. So in the current state, we identified all those issues that were there. So, and then similarly, we developed the future state by identifying how we can kind of automate those steps, how we can cross-train people into doing multiple tasks, so that they can kind of cut down on the time that each request takes to complete. So strategy analysis thinking from you can go from very low level into one process within a processes, or you can go for the overall organization as well. Now, from my experience, what I have observed, most of the organization they do not have they rarely have somebody who is dedicated for strategy analysis, or they have a group of people who are strategy, because they mostly outsource that to the big fours or other big companies who do that for them, because they are very neutral. Because if you what I've seen, that there's a lot of bias that happens within the organization, right? Sometimes you will see that, you know what, let's just go with this solution because I like it, or because 10 people like it, so let's go for it. No. So most of the organizations, they have outsourced the strategy analysis piece. So probably in your career as a BA, not that I have, you might not even go through that entire strategy analysis in your lifetime, because it's been outsourced to somebody else. Unless you are like very highly kind of ranked, educated, this, that, and you're working for those big fours as a dedicated strategy analyst, then you will get to do this. But yes, in simply, if I want to answer your question, the strategy answer can also be performed for a small process improvement as well as a project improvement, or as well as in the organization level.
All right, that answers my question. Thank you so much.
Yeah, because if you remember, and one of the I think when I mentioned that no matter what project or initiative you are in, you will have to do the current state analysis. Even if it has been done by somebody else in the past, you will still go through those things to understand if that is still relevant or not, right?
Okay, just a follow-up question. So let's say you come up with a strategy plan to automate something or make something more efficient. Now, so when it comes to changes, how much resistance can you expect from people? Because let's say someone sees, like someone might perceive it as an attack, personal attack or something, like you are calling my process inefficient. So how do you go about it? Is it like a way you're talking, or how do you deal with all this? Thanks.
See, as a BA, and from my personal experience, you have to come up with a rationale every time you want to say something or kind of suggest something. So, and as a human, I've seen that it is hard for us to kind of embrace that change at first, or most of the humans. Somebody will be like, okay, I'm very excited, let's just change this. I totally don't mind, we'll have something new, I'll be very excited. Some people, they would hold off onto that current status or current technology, whatever, because they do not want to change, they have some sort of fear. You have to come up with those rationale that why. See, it's about, you need a change. No, 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 you don't. You need a change because this. You have to explain why a change is needed. You have to come up with those constraints, those pain points, those problem areas to explain, to show. For example, in one of my projects, what I did a presentation to show why that project process needs changing. The business process that I talked about, why that needs changing. What would be benefited? What would improve if we change that process from manual to automated? You have to come up with those questions because the resistance will always be there. But the way you deal with it, the way you kind of calm those nerves down, the way you answer those hidden questions, as well as uh, the explicit questions, would make you in a better position rather than kind of pushing someone to the change. You want to pull, they should be pulled towards the change. We feel that it's going to add value. We do not want to be pushed to the change. They should see that value in the future state. They should see what they're going to gain. There could be a short-term pain, but what about the long-term gain? So you have to come up with those answers. You have to come up with those rationales. You have to come up with those some sort of presentations, some sort of demos, even observation. Once you observe the process, you can document findings. You know what? This is what is happening right now. This is how it's been done. But my recommendation is this based on my experience. Would you want to consider this? This will help you with this. So when you show the proof, show the evidence of your investigation and your analysis, when you show the value that they're going to get out of something, I think it's it's a far better approach than just telling somebody that, you know what, from next month you're getting a new system. It will be shocking. We will have a lot of unnecessary questions to answer. But when we come up with a foolproof plan, foolproof strategy, even to implement a strategy, you have to come up with a strategy. So think about that.
That makes sense. Because I only raise this question because there's some people I've dealt with in the past whose who basically answered to my analysis by saying, "Trust me, bro." So it's the
And
kind of
sometimes,
people.
no, I really appreciate your question. Sometimes you need to think in a way that, if I was in that position, what would I do and how would I react? So if somebody, let's say, if you're driving to the office every day, right? And from tomorrow, if I ask you, you know what, stop, you're not going to use the car, you're going to use your bike from tomorrow. Even if it's a 5 minute drive, you're going to use your bike tomorrow. How would you feel?
Okay, I see.
What
Mm.
questions you would ask me? So think of those general scenarios which will help you prepare those questions and answers and come with the logic. If I tell you the
All right.
benefits, you
Thank you
know
so much.
what? If you, instead of driving 5 minutes to your office, you should just bike. It will take 15 minutes, but it will also help you in improving your health. How about that? So I'm giving you something with a logic and giving you something which will add value to yourself. So you might not kind of resist that much as you would to a straight question that, you know what, stop using the car, use bike from tomorrow. So it's as a BA, we have to be very, very um, kind of creative in each thing that you want to say, and it's the way you say it makes a difference, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I completely get you on that. All right, then. Thank you for that. It was really helpful.
Okay. Any other questions?
Ankit, is there any technique that you use to remember,